Shigaraki ended My Hero Academia Season 5 off with a shocking new surgery that did a lot to his body and made a lot of changes, but due to it, he unlocked some brand new quirks as a result of the doctor's meddling. So in this video, we're going to discuss every quirk that Shigaraki unlocks in Season 6 of My Hero Academia. We're going to go through each one. Spoilers ahead for the season, of course, if you're watching this before the season comes out, and if you're watching this a little later on when the season is already out. Hi, nice to see you from the future. I've already done a video discussing all the new quirks that Deku's going to be unlocking in Season 6, but right now instead let's do the same for Shigaraki. Let's go. Hit it! So the first quirk that Shigaraki is going to awaken in My Hero Academia Season 6, obviously it makes sense because this is what allows him to get the rest, is All for One. Now, all throughout the course of the series, everything that All for One and the Doctor has done is to create a body that could hold All for One. The Nomu program, every step of everything they've done, from the high ends, the regular Nomu, the villains and vigilantes, 9 from My Hero Academia Movie 2, all of that has led to Shigaraki's surgery to prepare his body to receive the full-fledged 100% All for One quirk. And in this arc, we learn more about All for One than we ever have before, like what sort of quirk it is really. All for One, of course, is a quirk that lets you take other people's quirks and store them in your body. And mentally, you have a sort of library that you can scroll through of all the different quirks that you have. To use All for One, the user has to take advantage of holes that are in their hand that are part of their quirk, that they literally suck the quirk into, or the essence of the person's quirk into, after making contact with their body. Usually we see All for One users grabbing someone around their head or their neck, and that tends to be the place where they make contact with someone when they steal their quirk. The second quirk that Shigaraki unlocks is going to be Search. Now, if you don't remember, Search is the former quirk of Ragdoll of the Pussycat Dolls fame from My Hero Academia Season 3. And this quirk was very useful for Ragdoll during the Forest training arc because it allowed her to keep track on all of the different students, because Search allows you to look at someone, mark them, and then you can kind of see them from long distances away using sort of like a key sense, extending your vision very, very far out as you see people as little stars kind of on the horizon depending on how far away they are. And these little star icons are visible through any sort of obstruction or anything, so Shigaraki can really get a lockdown on you, leave you, and always know where you are. The biggest secret benefit to this quirk, though, is that it also gives you information on a person's weak points. And for Shigaraki, the biggest benefit is that it comes preloaded with the information of the people that Ragdoll had already used it on. So Shigaraki already has a lock-on on Deku and various members of Class 1A because Ragdoll has met them already and used her quirk on them. This means that when Shigaraki looks at Deku, he can see Deku's weak points. He can see structurally where Deku is the weakest and aim for those locations with his attacks. And he can do the same thing for any new individual he comes across by just scanning them, by looking at them very quickly, adding them to search, and knowing exactly what their weaknesses are, or if they try to run away, how to hunt them down. He really doesn't have to rush. It's kind of scary. The third quirk that Shigaraki has in this arc is probably one of the most crucial, and that is Super Regeneration. Now, we've seen Super Regeneration multiple times throughout the series, especially way more lately, right? Because we've seen it as part of the high-end Nomu, like the high-end Nomu that Endeavor fought in Season 4, how it was able to regenerate from any single cell or anything that it had that was split off from the main body. It had complete and full utter scary regeneration powers. That is the sort of regeneration that we're seeing with Shigaraki here, but you have to remember, once Shigaraki goes through a surgery and his body is modified and everything at the very end of My Hero Academia Season 5, Shigaraki is now on an almost kind of pseudo All Might like level, right? He is being compared to prime All Might at this stage that his body is in currently. So you have to understand how giving a person like that super regeneration is really just a massive cheat code, because it already takes so much to actually do damage to Shigaraki's body, and then for him to just kind of heal over that, it's just hacks. So expect to see Shigaraki surviving from some stuff that normally you would never see anyone survive from, and I feel like it really raises kind of like the horror imagery that Horikoshi is allowed to include in My Hero Academia, because we know that Horikoshi is a big fan of horror. He's even discussed making a horror manga of his own. And I want to say, ever since this arc, the scary imagery and the gore and everything has definitely been turned up a lot in this series, and you're going to see it quite a bit from Shigaraki just getting destroyed and regenerating, right? Very, very accurately with how skin and muscles will regenerate, right? It's very, very grotesque in some ways, but it also makes Shigaraki just look so raw when he's torn apart and he's in pieces and he's still fighting. Next up, this is a rather interesting quirk because I feel like it was much more useful than a lot of people thought it would be, and that would be radio waves. Now, during the assault on the villains by the heroes in this arc of My Hero Academia, everyone is equipped, or at least most people are equipped, key people are equipped with earpieces, right? It's a really good way of keeping communication with everyone, knowing what's going on in each area, knowing, like, you know, how much of this we have left to go, and kind of adapting on the battlefield with communication on the fly. But a big issue is Shigaraki, using his radio waves quirk, can completely scramble their communication. It's just filling their communications with static and making it impossible for anyone to talk to each other, and that way of completely cutting off communication is very, very useful in a warlike situation like the one that Shigaraki has found himself in. But it's not just there where it stops with radio waves, because radio waves can also be used to give the Nomu very specific commands, right? So it's a way of pretty much controlling the Nomu directly and making them all work towards a certain task, or literally just telling them exactly what you want to do, right? Like, you know how Shigaraki has been a gamer all throughout the series of My Hero Academia, making video game quotes? It's like the boss summoning a bunch of random monsters and then literally controlling them to come and help him, or to come around and do exactly what he wants them to do. So it's just kind of an extension of All For One itself at that point, because All For One allows Shigaraki to use all these various different quirks in his body, but if he can control high-end Nomu that are then packed with their own quirks, it's like there's a bunch of little Shigarakis going around, or there's at least extensions of himself, kind of like the Six Paths of Pain or something, right? It really just takes Shigaraki's danger to a whole other level. And the last quirk that Shigaraki is going to unlock, at least in the War Arc for My Hero Academia Season 6, is going to be Rivet Stab. And we've seen this quirk used by All For One in Kamino against All Might. This is the quirk that All For One shot out of his fingers. It was like a black, kind of long, metallic looking thing that he shot out of his fingers, or at least that stretched out of his fingers. It had red marks on it. You're going to be seeing it on the screen right now. But he used that to stab All Might in the back and then drag him away from Gran Torino. And we see Shigaraki using that quite a bit in this arc, right? We're going to see him using it from his hands. At one point, it comes out of his back like a bunch of spider legs to hold them aloft in the air. It's really, really scary, and it's a really unique quirk, I'll say. And I know that All For One used Forced Quirk Activation mixed with this quirk, but I don't think we saw Shigaraki using Forced Quirk Activation. But that's kind of the thing here, right? This is a list of quirks that he unlocks in Season 6 of My Hero Academia, but technically he unlocks every quirk that All For One has ever had in the past, right? Not the quirks that we've seen All For One use ever since the Kamino fight, because that was a different loadout of All For One, but every quirk that All For One had when he originally fought All Might and leading up until that point, until he switched quirks with Shigaraki, is what Shigaraki has at his disposal. Now, I'm taking a chance here because I don't know if we are going to reach this point in My Hero Academia Season 6. So if you want the video to be over, it's over, right? You can go right now, but I want to include this just in case we do get surprised and get this fight in My Hero Academia Season 6, because it is a very short fight when it comes to, like, the anime, right? They could just put this in one episode if they did happen to get this far. But what I'm talking about is one of America's biggest heroes comes to Japan and Shigaraki intercepts them and they get into a little bit of a fight. And in that arc, Shigaraki does show off a couple more quirks that we haven't talked about yet in this video. The first quirk that Shigaraki shows off in the Star and Stripes fight is going to be Reflect. And at the very least, we know that this quirk works on light-based attacks, like laser beams or anything like that, right? Like the laser beams shot by a jet equipped with laser beams. So Shigaraki uses this quirk to reflect attacks that are sent towards him back to their place of origin, right? And it's a very, very useful quirk, especially in this battle against Star and Stripes. But again, I'm not 100% sure if it can reflect all attacks or if it just reflects light-based attacks, like if it's literally supposed to be a reflection. The next quirk we actually see Shigaraki take is Wing, which is stolen from one of the high-end Nomu that Shigaraki still has after the War Arc. And Wing was a Nomu that we did see in the War Arc, I believe, that had wings. It's kind of like its whole namesake, and Shigaraki takes that, and from there he can make giant black wings out of his back to allow him to fly, because it doesn't seem like Shigaraki at this point currently has a quirk that allows him to fly and move with as much mobility as he would need in a fight that takes place in the sky. The third quirk that Shigaraki shows off in his battle against Star and Stripes is Scatter, and this quirk was used together with Reflect to take, let's say, a laser beam that was shot at Shigaraki. He caught it with Reflect, more or less, and in the instant that he caught it and it touched his Reflect, he then used Scatter to turn the one beam that hit him into multiple beams, right? So he not only reflected the technique, but he split the technique into multiple different beams. And you can see how this quirk might not be all that useful for someone who doesn't have Reflect, right? Like the original user, if someone shot a projectile at them, they could say Scatter and maybe it would just split into different ones and miss them, or it would split into different ones and all of them would hit them. But here, combined with Reflect, it does present a very, very useful opportunity for Shigaraki to use. And that's one of the great things about All for One, right? It's not only just the fact that you have all these different quirks, but you can use them together. You can combine them. You can even combine 10, 20 different quirks if you want into one specific effect, which is part of what makes this quirk so dangerous. The fourth quirk that we saw Shigaraki use was Springlike Limbs. And this is a quirk that we saw All for One use in his fight against All Might during Kamino, and it allowed him to kind of coil up his limbs and really make his arm, let's say, very compact together. And when that tension is released, especially with Shigaraki's massive strength, it gives him a massive boost in the direction that he's trying to go in. Very much like how Deku would punch behind him or kick behind himself and go flying in one direction. It's like a very strong version of that. And especially when mixed with Air Blast or Air Cannon, a quirk that we talked about a little earlier in the video, you could see how that would give him, you know, kind of not literally teleportation, but he gets to places very fast this way. We see him do it to Deku and Bakugo in this arc. He just kind of pulls up on them very suddenly because his speed, combining all these different quirks, is not something to play with. And finally, the last quirk that Shigaraki shows off in My Hero Academia Season 6 potentially is Heavy Payload, which is an attack that he used when he was doing one of his big air blasts, I believe to amplify the technique or at least make it hit harder, because this air blast that he used when he did Heavy Payload was much larger and much more giant than any other air blast that we've seen Shigaraki use. So I believe Heavy Payload, payload being kind of like projectile and everything, Heavy Payload makes any projectile that he shoots out much larger or much more damaging, or at least it gives it a much bigger effect. So you could see how a person who has different projectiles or could reflect different projectiles and mix that quirk together would be extremely dangerous again, right? Because this is just another one of those broken quirks, not so much for the person who has it, unless I guess they were shooting or had some sort of interesting hero item that shot projectiles and they can make bigger. This is just, it's just the perfect quirk to have stolen and added to All for One. You definitely couldn't give me All for One because I'd be looking for all the best quirks to perfect my kit. And those are all the quirks that Shigaraki unlocks with All for One in My Hero Academia Season 6. So let me know if you want to see more of these sorts of videos, if you want to see me talk more about things coming in My Hero Academia Season 6, or if you're watching this video in the future, if you want to hear me talk about things that have already happened and explain them a little better. For now though, it was nice seeing you guys for another upload, keeping the daily upload train going. Please get this video to 1,000 likes just to show me that you guys liked it and this is something that you want to see more of. And if you've been enjoying my content lately, I'd love for you to subscribe, or if you're subscribed, please hit that bell icon and get that notification so you can see when my new videos go up, because only 19% of my subscribers seem to be getting notifications according to my analytics. So I'd love to raise that number so at least you see my videos and you could decide if you want to watch it or not on your own. I love you guys again. It's Pineapple. I'll see you later. Peace.